Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of FiST Chat, the podcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern to discuss all manner of food and culinary experiences and the like. How are we today, Steve?
I'm very well, thanks, Ben, and I'm hungry to get into this week's FiST.
Absolutely, especially considering you're dieting at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's been an experience in itself, and I think we'll talk more about that today.
Absolutely. So don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, interact with us there as well. You can subscribe to our video at YouTube, Vimeo, and Digicosm TV. You can also check out all our back episodes there, and also subscribe to our audio via RSS, iTunes, and FeedBurner. And you can follow our blogs as well, and we have weekly ones coming through. And before we get stuck into our food topics today, just wanted to mention a couple of things. We've launched a new website called diettotryit.com, so DIETTOTRYIT.com. Try and saying that 10 times fast.
Tastes better than it sounds, Ben.
Absolutely. There's not a lot on it at the moment, but we're going to be publishing a new blog, basically to do with dieting. Maybe Steve, could you tell us maybe just a brief snapshot of what it's about?
Well, rather than giving you dietary advice, really, it's just a place where hopefully people can talk about what the diet experience that they're on is like to prepare people. Very often, we don't have a lot of choice, Ben. You know, a partner might go on a diet for medical reasons, or they might just decide that for ethical reasons or whatnot, they want to go on a diet. And, you know, people don't often consider, what it's going to mean in terms of shopping. That might have to change. The way you prepare meals might have to change. And the way you enjoy meals might have to change as well. So it's really more information about that, and hopefully a forum where people will be able to swap recipes, experiences, and help, basically talk about what a diet's like before they go on it.
Absolutely. It'll be a very exciting new project to work on. And it should also bear mentioning too that we have been interested in food here on FiST Chat. We've had two of the episodes that we've done in the past. One on coffee, which was episode 21 back last year. And just related to that, I did a follow-up blog this week for Bit Rebels where I talked about one of my experiences with coffee and the effects, which was always a lot of fun. And we also did one, our first episode, I believe, this year, Eat Less, Age Less, number 54. So, which is self-explanatory. If you, the more you eat, the less good it gets, really.
Yeah, and we might even talk a bit more about that tonight.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to obviously plug one of my side series here, fooddiscoveries.com. Haven't had any recent episodes, but we're always working on something, and we've got a whole bunch of episodes of culinary experiences around the world, so have a look at that too.
Yes, definitely check it out. It's delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll move on to our main topic, and this is quite interesting, really. Infusing medicinal sort of products into food to sort of fortify the food and make it better. The idea that you can introduce health-promoting compounds to food, and what do they call it? Nutraceuticals. This is the term that I saw in the article that was talking about this off of Chemistry World, RIC.org. Kind of interesting, but I think, before we got on, you mentioned if you eat right in the first place, you don't need to infuse your food with medicinal compounds.
Yeah, look, I don't want to be disrespectful to the person who invented the term nutraceuticals, yeah. But I think as soon as you hear a new word like that, that really means it's a business.
So kind of like, are we talking about sort of like the way vitamins are promoted, perhaps?
Yeah, well, it's a new food range, isn't it? It'll be new and improved and help you stay healthy, I'm sure. I mean, there are already some products out there like that. They're probably just not termed nutraceuticals. So, for instance, in some countries, they can add folate to flour for breads and things like that, and in other countries as well, Certainly in Australia, you can buy cholesterol-lowering spreads,
Yeah.
fit bread and that sort of thing. So they would basically be those sorts of medicinal products. But, really it's hard to gauge how effective they might be because there are a few drawbacks with them. So, for instance, if you take a pill, you know exactly how much you're taking. The doctor can say take 2, don't take any more. But what if I'm super hungry and I eat the whole loaf of bread? or whatever else I do.
Have we overdosed?
That's right. I mean, it's probably not such a problem with some additives, but if there were actual pharmaceuticals in there, there may be a problem. And you also wonder how the public would perceive it. It sounds like a really good idea, but there are certain sections of the public who are terrified by hormones in their food.
Or genetically modified food and all of that sort of thing too.
Really, whether or not you should be afraid of those things is a whole other question. But I can't see this as coming across as any different to certain sections of the public. I think it was going to be a very hard sell, even though there is some merit to the idea.
Yeah, well, just in this same article too, they're talking about this sort of thing where an applicant for a product like this would need to demonstrate that the product is safe, that it has appropriate nutritional qualities, and also, probably most importantly, that consumers are not going to be misled, which is a big thing,
Look, Ben, as somebody who has just been on a low sugar, no added sugar diet for the past 2 weeks, I'm already sick of reading the packets for nutritional information. I cannot imagine what this is going to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, but it's true. You have to know exactly what's in your food.
Yeah.
And everyone has the right to know exactly what's in their food. If you're going to start adding medicinal quantities, I mean, anyone who's ever picked up a prescription and in the box they've got a little leaflet with, like all the counterindications, et cetera, side effects. I mean, you're going to buy some pasta and you're going to have to read a booklet before you boil it up.
Well, it may come to that in the future if this takes off.
Well, look, like I say, it's a good idea, and perhaps as we move further and further away from the food chain, I mean, only 2 decades ago in Australia, almost everybody knew somebody who had a link to the countryside or was a agricultural producer. Nowadays, I don't know, that's shrunk to 1 in 5 people or even less. And as we lose that connection to food production and, things become grown hydroponically, they become genetically modified, they become artificially enhanced with nutrition, then, perhaps really these ideas are just a signpost on the road to the future.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine a lot of foodies being in favour of this, though. They want their traditional fresh produce.
Absolutely. Now, talking about perceptions of food as well, another thing that we came across from the reporter.com.au this week was this idea of ethical eating, where people are more aware these days of where's the food coming from. They want the eggs, meat, chicken, whatever. They want it to be raised or killed in a humane way. And, that sort of like fair trade type of thing, it's all fairly paid for. Farmers are getting their cut and all of that sort of thing. And that's sort of rising awareness. But that's kind of tough too, isn't it? I mean, there's still people out there that will think, I'll take my caged eggs, thanks, I don't care.
Well, that's right. And just on that, somewhere down the track, Try It to Diet will be trying an ethical-based diet along those lines. But already having done a bit of preliminary research, the person taking those caged eggs might purely be because they won't be able to afford, produce that's completely ethical. And this is another ethical question that's very, very important when it comes to diet. We've managed, certainly in the first world, we've managed in the last 100 years to raise the standard of living incredibly, where everybody can expect reasonable food security and good supply of good fresh food at a reasonable price. If that is to change, that I think, as people already probably understand, is really a very big societal shift. And that then starts impacting in a whole lot of ways that probably a lot of first world countries haven't ever experienced, not in recent times.
And I guess, like anything, if they want these things to take off, it really comes down to the bottom line. How do we make it cheaper and the better alternative than the ones we don't want people to use, kind of thing?
Well, the fact is, if you can manufacture a food substitute with all the medicinal and nutritional needs in it, and it's cheaper than fresh produce, then maybe it's the way to go.
Maybe we'll talk about that in our news bites a bit later. We'll move on to our first news bite related to film, which somehow magically ties food with film together. Reuters Africa actually had this interesting article. Toronto Film Festival is on, and it just for 11 days this month, Toronto will be the cinematic centre of the universe during its annual film festival, and hungry moviegoers will have plenty of food choices thanks to the city's flourishing restaurant scene. But the thing that I liked was later on in this. This sounds like what the low-budget filmmakers do. There's a new generation of young chefs who, with very low budgets, create wonderful restaurants with great energy and a kind of direction and creativity. It's like they're making a film, but they're making food.
I think the marketing department of the Toronto Film Festival, which is one of the best film festivals in the world, I think their marketing department is spending a lot of time in some restaurants, don't you, Ben?
As you would, and I'm sure they're getting a lot of good meals out of it too.
I think so. I mean, but just on films and food, Soylent Green is a favourite of mine, and probably a film that everybody should watch at some stage. Let's hope it's not prophetic, but it may have something to do with the food of the future, which is kind of what you're alluding to.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to our science news by now. And from the Sydney Morning Herald, vegetarian diets may be the solution to impending water crises. And essentially, here we go. Leading water scientists have issued one of the sternest warnings yet about global food supply, saying the world's population may have to switch almost completely to a vegetarian diet over the next 40 years to avoid catastrophic shortages. So there goes our steak and everything else that we have come to take for granted.
Sounds a lot like Soylent Green, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I don't know what to say to that. I mean, look, it's quite possible. I think what people don't understand.
Isn't that just a question of numbers, you think? Like if there's the more people you put on, I mean, you can't, you're going to produce more animals to feed all these people?
Well, exactly. And I mean, it might work if we start eating domesticated animals like rats, cats and dogs, because there are plenty of them. They can live with humans. I think in an earlier FiST chat episode we pointed out how many or how plentiful they were.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I don't think there's a problem with global population. But I do think there might be a problem with what people expect their living standards will be with a larger global population.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that includes food. I mean, so the way in which our generation is accustomed to eating may not be the norm in the future, and that may not be such a bad thing.
Absolutely. But heed not, because for our tech news bite, we may have the solution here, and that's 3D printing of food. Now, we might have touched on this in a previous episode with 3D printing, and essentially that's, being able to recreate objects via a printer. You can, now it's probably at the stage where it's creating sort of simpler objects. The idea is for it to keep going further. I think we were discussing how they were creating engine parts for planes and things like that. But
just so people know how they work, is they're basically like a box, and you can create any 3D object out of them. The key is what you are creating it out of. So it works like almost like a solder through an inkjet. So if you imagine the ink being solid, you can create an object this shape with a 3D printer, and that would be made out of plastic or metal, depending on what the actual stuff you've got in the printer is.
Absolutely, and with a bit more ingenuity and a bit more time for the best minds in the world to come up with this, they'll eventually be able to create a printer that can print food. Now, you would think if they can do that, not only is that the closest thing to a Star Trek replicator that you're going to come across, but it may also solve a few problems.
Well, I think if they just make food substitute, which is just of one consistency, and maybe it's just like a foam, a bit like bread or something doughy, with one of these particular food printers, you can actually inject the nutrition and your nutraceuticals in there, as well as some flavour. And even though it wouldn't be anything to do with the food that it looked like, it would taste like that and probably even be better for you. And this is awesome.
So how far away do you think we can expect this, Steve? It won't be for a while, yeah?
No, they could do it today.
They could?
I guess, they just need to work out what the food substitute would be. Because at the moment, well, I guess you could have, as complicated as you like, you could have 3 or 4 nozzles. It's really just what you'd make the food out of. Absolutely. Because obviously it's only what you can feed through a tube.
Yeah.
So it would have to be something that would either set or harden after you inject it.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we're out of time talking about food, so thanks again for the chat.
Well, I'm hungry, FiST Chat fans. Tweet us. Check out Try It to Diet.
Absolutely. So that's it for this week's episode, so we'll catch you next week.